What is up, my dashing dudes and darling dames? I am the Hans TV, and welcome back to the juiciest of the subreddits. It's r/ProRevenge. Our first post for the day comes from J. Stark 1994, The Case of the Missing Firewood. When my grandpa was growing up, he didn't have electricity, this being rural Kansas. What they did have was a wood-burning stove. At one point, firewood that great-grandfather had been storing began to disappear. A thief was afoot. My great-grandfather, getting tired of the firewood disappearing, hatches a plan. Great-grandfather takes some of the logs and drills them out, leaving a cavity. He then puts some gunpowder in the cavities and plugs the holes to hide his handiwork. That night, he tells my grandpa that he would bring in the firewood. Of course, he knows what logs he's messed with. Now, this is the funny part, and I wish I knew how embellished it was, but stranger things have happened. The next day, my great-grandfather is walking into town, and comes across a gentleman also headed into town, and they get to talking. It turns out the gentleman is going into town to make a purchase. The item he seeks? A new stove. He says to my grandfather, "I don't know what they're putting in the coal these days, but it destroyed my stove." No wood ever went missing again. I mean, I agree with teaching thieves the lesson, but good lord, your grandfather absolutely destroyed this man's stove. Our next post comes from Capital Dar. You can't drive through that. Back in 2004, we had those big plastic round garbage bins in our back alley, about 6 of them down every alley in my neighborhood. They were huge, about 4 feet tall by 4 feet wide at the top. They got emptied every Thursday around 8 in the morning. I lived half a block down the alley from the local bar, and every few weeks I'd go out in the morning to see all the bins knocked down. Some drunk idiot was driving his beater home around the time the bar closed at 2 a.m. I figured he was hitting them on purpose, just for laughs. Once winter came, the plastic got more brittle, and every bin that was hit got cracked and or destroyed. The city never did anything other than just replace the bins, but it would take a few weeks, and it was irritating to have to pick them up all the time, or use a farther away bin, because the nearby one was toast. So this continued for months, and winter gets cold here in Canada. We had a solid week of -40. One Saturday night, I saw red and blue lights flashing through my curtains. Walked out to see a completely totaled mid-80s Buick wrapped around a bin. One of my neighbors decided to fill the bin with water, which froze into a solid block of ice. I don't know for sure which neighbor did it, but they are absolute heroes in my mind. Guy got arrested, so I assume he was charged with drunk driving at the least. Tow truck took away what was left of the car, but the bin stayed there for a couple months as a monument of stupidity filled with ice, because it was too heavy to move, and also wasn't in the least bit damaged by the collision. I guess you could say that revenge is a dish, best served cold. This next post comes from Mizun. Roommate thought she was sneaky, ended up owing me $400 and got suspended. So this happened second semester dorming at my college campus. I'd met my roommate at orientation and could kind of already tell she was going to be a pain in my ass. And I was right about that. I'd planned on moving rooms to be closer to some friends the next semester. But let me get to the story that led to my revenge. On our campus, you have to pay for meals using your student ID, which had a certain amount of money on it each semester. You could also use an app that you put your name and ID info into, and it makes it easier to pay. But the name and ID must match for it to work, which will be important later. Any funds from the fall semester would roll over into the spring, but then at the end of spring, it would just expire. Because of this, and because I only ate once or twice a day, I had a ton saved up on my card. My roommate, on the other hand, did not. So I offered to pay for some of her meals from time to time, in trade of her picking up the food for us, which involved her using my card twice in person and then she'd return it. Then, one day, I noticed on my app that my card was being charged even when I was not ordering food. And not just a meal, like a meal for several people. This meant that whoever was ordering, I wonder who, either had to have stolen my ID card, which I had in my pocket when I got the charge, or was impersonating my info in the app, which are both big no-nos on my campus. I was quick to put 2 and 2 together and was pretty pissed. I was initially going to confront her on it, but decided to formulate a plan instead. That day, I went and ordered a second ID card for $25 to use for later, as it took a couple of weeks to get the new one. I let her charge several things to my card over a good 2 weeks, for her and her friends. And she wasn't very good at hiding it either, as they would come to our dorm and eat. while I just screenshot and sent emails to the support team of the app about the charges, knowing nothing would get done until I contacted some person. And one day, it got even better, as you can buy groceries with the card off campus as well. She decided to pay alcohol with my card, which doesn't get pinged as an issue on my card due to me being over 21. But she was only 19. Not sure how she got it, but it was just the thing to finally act on my plan. I put my best sad face on and contacted the head of campus living and head of my dorm about the charges on my account. I dropped some hints that it could be my roommate and mentioned I got a new ID and asked what I should do. I was told to order a new card and once I got it, to deactivate my current ID and use the new one for purchases now, making my old ID have a balance of $0 and also to ping if someone uses it to buy anything. They also told me they would be visiting my dorm to discuss the issue with my roommate. I accepted that and waited. They sent the confirmation email that they would be visiting, and I just decided to add more food to the fire. My roommate was groaning about not having the funds for food in front of me in our dorm. I told her I really couldn't help her as I was running low on funds, and she just kind of laughed it off and left the room to probably go use my old ID. I deactivated my first card right after she left, and surprise, surprise, she used my info to pay. Except when she tried to pay for her and her friends this time, it was declined and it pinged that my ID was used. Campus security was called and she was escorted back to our dorm. Pretty much perfect timing for our meeting with campus living. She was scared when they came to the dorm to talk and look through her stuff. On her phone, still logged into the app, was my ID information and name. And in her dorm closet was a half-full bottle of cheap vodka. And on my phone was a screenshot of said unauthorized vodka purchase. In the end, she was forced to pay me back all the funds she used in cash. Reported for underage drinking, which automatically suspends you from campus living for at least a year, and would have on her record that she performed identity theft, which I could also have charged her for out of school. In the end, I got to have my own dorm for the remainder of that semester, and even part of the semester after, because it wasn't put as an available room for new dormers. I did get all my money back from her parents, who were so embarrassed and apologized profusely. And when she did eventually come back to campus, no one wanted to dorm with her because they knew she had stolen her roommate's ID. I think in the end, she rented off campus. Jesus Christ. I mean, I've had my fair share of bad roommates, but nothing like this. No one's ever stolen my identity and used it to buy food for other people. That's just like a dick move. Our final post for today comes from Monty K, the guy in the suit who doesn't know anything. A few years ago, I had the misfortune to work for a truly dysfunctional boss at a micro niche company that provided training for a certain group of professionals that had to do continuous training. If I mention the group, you would know the company, so I won't. I was the senior technical lead for a certain application, so I worked with every department in the company. Anyway, this company was owned by a guy that happened to be in the right place at the right time, with the right product, and was successful in spite of himself. Since he thought he was a genius, and he wasn't, of course he packed the whole company with a crew of equally mindless idiots. Think Minions on steroids. But the crown jewel was the sales team. They were the quintessential narcissists who would take a 2-hour lunch with all the sales buddies and boss and have 3 martinis and a couple of lines of a certain illegal substance. The one star of the bunch was the bane of my existence while I was there. He would call and demand that I stop what I was doing and fix all of his problems while he was on the phone. Half the time, he would call me later and cuss me out for doing the opposite of what he demanded. I didn't, but he couldn't remember since he was drunk. I finally resorted to tell him to send me an email that explicitly stated what he wanted done. That way, I could prioritize his tasks and have proof of exactly what he asked for. However, 5 minutes after he sent the email, he would call me and demand that I stop what I was doing and fix his problems. Since we were in a sales-oriented company, complaining to the boss didn't do any good. All I got was, just make him happy so he doesn't complain to the owner. Thanks, boss. Now comes the revenge. I finally had enough. I was looking for a job anyway, and I was underpaid, so I wasn't worried about any blowback. Whenever something broke and he demanded an immediate explanation, I started using Star Trek technobabble. Yeah, that report broke because the Heisenberg compensator blew black through the subspace conduit. Sorry, that user couldn't access the system because the dilithium warp router needed to be hooked up to the Jeffries tube. He bought it all! And then comes the best part. I found out the best part after he left the company. He repeated everything I told him to his clients, word for word. They just thanked him for the information and he went on his way. And then they laughed after he hung up the phone. It didn't change anything because even before this, their nickname for him was the guy in the suit who doesn't know anything. I mean, this is halfway a story about Kevin. Jesus Christ, this guy's an idiot. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's episode of r/ProRevenge. I hope you liked the stories, and if you did, I'm going to link them down in the description as always. And if you liked the video, subscribe, share, drop a like, and a comment down below what you'd like to see me read next. A humongous thank you to everyone who's subscribing and who keeps on subscribing. I can't thank y'all enough for what y'all do for the channel and what y'all do for my community. I can't wait to see where this year takes me. But with that being said, I will see you in the next video.